I never imagined that a 16-year-old girl sweeping floors would be the one to expose the most sophisticated international fraud I'd ever witnessed. But what I didn't know was that Sophia wasn't just any teenager, and the three men in expensive suits sitting in Sheikh Khalid's mahogany-paneled office weren't who they claimed to be either. My name is Margaret O'Sullivan, and for the past 8 years, I've worked as head housekeeper for Sheikh Khalid Al-Mansuri at his Boston mansion. At 62, I thought I'd seen everything in my decades of service to wealthy families. The Sheikh was different from my previous employers, kinder, more respectful, treating his staff like family rather than invisible servants. His Beacon Hill mansion, with its Persian rugs worth more than most people's houses and original Monet paintings adorning the walls, had become more home to me than the small apartment I rented downtown. That Tuesday morning in October started like any other. The autumn air carried the scent of burning leaves through the mansion's tall windows as I supervised the weekly deep cleaning. Carmen Vasquez, our head cleaner, arrived precisely at 7 with her daughter Sophia. Carmen had been with us for 3 years, a quiet, efficient woman who spoke broken English, but whose work was impeccable. Sophia, her 16-year-old daughter, helped after school and on weekends, saving money for college. The girl was brilliant, always carrying textbooks and speaking softly to her mother in rapid Spanish. I was polishing the silver tea service in the butler's pantry when I heard Sheikh Khalid's voice echoing from the main foyer. His tone carried an excitement I hadn't heard in months. Following the sound, I found him greeting 3 men in charcoal suits, their handshakes firm, their smiles practiced. The Sheikh's usually composed demeanor had been replaced by barely contained enthusiasm. "Margaret," he called, noticing me in the doorway. "Please, prepare the conference room. We'll need the good crystal for tea, and ask Carmen to ensure everything is spotless. This is the meeting I've been waiting for." His dark eyes sparkled with anticipation as he gestured toward his guests. "These gentlemen represent a consortium from Dubai. We're discussing a $250 million infrastructure project." The 3 visitors nodded politely as I made mental notes. The tallest one, who'd introduced himself as Mr. Rashid, wore a Rolex that caught the chandelier light. The second man, Mr. Hassan, carried a leather briefcase that looked expensive enough to feed a family for months. The third, younger than the others, and introduced as Mr. Farid, kept checking his phone with nervous energy. As I prepared the conference room, arranging bone china cups and saucers on the antique mahogany table, I couldn't shake a strange feeling. In 8 years of working for Sheikh Khalid, I'd met dozens of his business associates from the Middle East. These men felt different somehow. Their Arabic, when they spoke it, sounded stilted, careful, but I dismissed the thought. What did I know about regional dialects? The meeting began at 9 sharp. Through the thick oak doors, I could hear the low murmur of voices discussing investment figures that made my head spin. $250 million for renewable energy projects across Morocco and Algeria. The Sheikh's voice carried genuine passion as he described his vision for solar farms that would power entire cities. Around 10:30, I was arranging fresh flowers in the hallway when Sophia appeared with her mother's cleaning cart. The girl moved quietly, as always, but I noticed her pause near the conference room door. Her usually serene expression had changed to something I couldn't quite identify. Alertness, maybe even alarm. "Everything all right, dear?" I whispered. Sophia looked at me with eyes much older than her 16 years. "Mrs. Margaret, those men ... double quotes." She hesitated, glancing toward the closed door. "Something's not right about them." Before I could ask what she meant, the conference room door opened. Mr. Rashid emerged, speaking rapidly in Arabic to his colleagues. His voice carried frustration, and he gestured emphatically toward a stack of documents on the table. That's when Sophia did something that changed everything. She stepped forward, looked directly at Mr. Rashid, and responded in fluent, perfect Arabic. Not the hesitant phrases of a high school language student, but the confident flow of a native speaker. Her words were clear, precise, and they made Mr. Rashid's face drain of all color. The silence that followed felt like thunder. Sheikh Khalid's expression shifted from confusion to sharp attention. Mr. Hassan dropped his briefcase, papers scattering across the Persian rug. Mr. Frid's phone slipped from his suddenly trembling fingers. Sophia continued speaking, her voice steady and strong. She pointed to the documents, then to each of the 3 men, her Arabic becoming more rapid and urgent. I couldn't understand the words, but her tone was unmistakable. She was exposing something terrible. Sheikh Khalid's face had gone white, then flushed deep red. His hands clenched into fists as he listened to Sophia's revelations. When she finished speaking, the silence stretched so long, I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Get out, Sheikh," Khalid said quietly, his accented English thick with barely controlled rage. "All three of you, get out of my house before I call the police." Mr. Rashid began protesting in broken Arabic, but Sheikh Khalid cut him off with a sharp gesture. "I said get out, now." The three men gathered their scattered papers with panicked haste and fled toward the front door. I heard their car engines roar to life, tires squealing against the cobblestone driveway as they sped away. Sheikh Khalid turned to Sophia, his expression a mixture of gratitude and amazement. In perfect Arabic, he asked her something that made her nod solemnly. Then he switched to English, his voice shaking. "Margaret, this young woman just saved me from losing everything. Those men were not from Dubai. They were not even Arab. They were criminals, sophisticated ones, but criminals nonetheless, attempting to steal $250 million through forged documents and false identities." My knees felt weak. I steadied myself against the doorframe, trying to process what had just happened. But how did Sophia know? How does she speak Arabic so fluently? Sophia looked at her mother, who had appeared silently in the hallway, her cleaning supplies forgotten. Carmen's expression was unreadable, but I caught something that looked like resignation in her eyes. "Mama," Sophia said softly in English, "I think it's time." Carmen nodded slowly. "Yes, Mia, it's time to tell them the truth." Sheikh Khalid gestured toward his private study. "Please, let's sit down. I have a feeling there's much more to this story." But what none of us realized was that the three fake investors fleeing down Beacon Hill was only the beginning. The real conspiracy was much deeper, much more dangerous. And someone we trusted completely had been working against us from the inside all along. In Sheikh Khalid's study, surrounded by first edition books and the warm glow of a gas fireplace, Carmen began to speak in careful, precise English, far more fluent than the broken phrases she'd used for 3 years. "My name is not Carmen Vasquez," she said, her accent shifting subtly. "It is Karima Al-Maghribi, and I am a former intelligence officer with the Moroccan Direction General de la Surveillance du Territoire. Sophia is my daughter, and we are political refugees." The words hit me like physical blows. 3 years I'd worked alongside this woman, shared coffee breaks, helped her daughter with English homework, and never suspected she was anything other than what she appeared to be. Sheikh Khalid leaned forward in his leather chair, his business instincts sharpening. "Why are you in hiding? What happened in Morocco?" Karima's hands trembled slightly as she reached for Sophia's hand. "I discovered a network of corrupt officials selling state secrets and military intelligence to international criminal organizations. When I tried to report it through official channels, I learned the corruption went all the way to the top. My commander, a man I trusted like a father, ordered my assassination." Sophia picked up the story, her voice stronger now. "We escaped through Spain, then Mexico. It took us 2 years to reach Boston. Mama chose to work as a cleaner because it made us invisible. No one notices the cleaning lady or her daughter. We've been hiding in plain sight." "But why didn't you tell me?" Sheikh Khalid asked gently. "I could have helped, provided protection. Legal assistance." "Because," Karima replied, "we didn't know who to trust. My training taught me that wealth and power often come with connections we don't see. We needed time to observe, to be certain you were truly the good man you appeared to be." I felt a chill run down my spine as implications began forming. If you recognized those men weren't Arab, if you knew they were criminals. How? Sophia exchanged a look with her mother before answering. "Because we've been tracking this organization for 4 years. They killed my father because he was investigating their operations in North Africa. The man you know as Mr. Rashid is actually Viktor Kozlov, a Russian arms dealer. Mr. Hassan is Jean-Baptiste Moreau, wanted by Interpol for money laundering. Mr. Farid is Ahmed Elmas, but he's not Egyptian, he's Serbian." The room felt like it was spinning. Sheikh Khalid's face had gone pale again. "You mean to tell me I was about to do business with international fugitives?" "Worse than that," Karima said grimly. "Their plan wasn't just to steal your money. They were going to use your reputation and connections to legitimize a network that funnels money to terrorist organizations across 3 continents. My hands were shaking now. I set down my teacup before I could drop it. "How do you know all this?" Sophia pulled out her phone, not the simple device I'd always seen her with, but a sophisticated smartphone with multiple security apps, because we never stopped working the case, even in exile. We've been feeding information to Interpol and the CIA through encrypted channels, building evidence against this network. The renewable energy project was perfect cover, Karima continued, legal, respectable, involving multiple governments and international banks. Once they had access to Sheikh Khalid's financial networks and business connections, they could move billions of dollars while appearing to fund legitimate development projects. Sheikh Khalid stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. I need to contact my bank immediately. If they have any documentation with my signatures. I'm afraid it's too late for that, Sophia said quietly. We all turned to stare at her. Her expression was grave, older than any 16-year-old should ever look. What do you mean? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. They didn't need to complete the meeting today. They already have what they needed. Sophia's fingers moved rapidly across her phone screen. Mama and I have been monitoring unusual activity in accounts connected to your business network for the past 6 months. Someone has been feeding them information from inside your organization. The silence that followed was deafening. Sheikh Khalid's face went from pale to ashen. Inside my organization. That's impossible. I trust everyone who has access to my financial information implicitly. I'm afraid it's not only possible. It's certain, Karima said gently, and I believe we know who it is. My stomach dropped. In 8 years of working for Sheikh Khalid, I'd become part of a small, tight-knit group of employees who had access to his most private affairs. There was me, his personal assistant Amelia, his driver Hassan, his security coordinator Robert, and his financial advisor Mr. Chen. The idea that one of us could betray him was devastating. Show me, Sheikh, Khalid said, his voice deadly quiet. Sophia connected her phone to the large monitor on his desk. Financial records appeared, transaction logs, email communications I recognized from Sheikh Khalid's private accounts. Red highlights marked dozens of entries over the past 6 months. Someone has been photographing documents, copying files, and transmitting detailed financial information to external servers, Sophia explained. The pattern shows they have access to your home office, your safe, and your private email accounts. I watched the data scroll past with growing horror. Bank account numbers, investment portfolios, real estate holdings, business partnerships, everything someone would need to forge documents or impersonate Sheikh Khalid in financial transactions. The access patterns show the person works closely with you, has legitimate reasons to handle confidential documents, and most importantly, double quotes. Sophia paused, highlighting a specific set of time. They were in your home office last Sunday evening, when you were at the charity gala. Sheikh Khalid's breathing became labored. Sunday evening. I remembered that night clearly because I'd stayed late to prepare for Monday's dinner party. I'd seen exactly one other person in the house, Amelia, he whispered. My heart broke watching his face crumble. Amelia Morrison had been his personal assistant for 4 years, a bright, efficient woman in her early 30s who managed his calendar, handled his correspondence, and had keys to every room in the house. She'd been like a daughter to him, and he'd paid for her mother's cancer treatments when her insurance fell short. We have more evidence, Karima said gently. Bank records showing payments to offshore accounts in her name, hotel receipts placing her in meetings with known associates of this criminal network, and most damaging. She gestured to Sophia, who pulled up a series of photographs on the screen. The images showed Amelia at various locations around Boston, meeting with the same 3 men who'd been in our conference room that morning. The photos were time-stamped over the past 3 months. She's been planning this for almost a year, Sophia explained. The renewable energy project was her idea, wasn't it? She brought you the initial proposal, introduced you to the investors, handled all the preliminary communications. Sheikh Khalid sank into his chair, as if the weight of betrayal was physically crushing him. Yes, she was so excited about it. Said it would be your legacy project, something that would help millions of people while generating substantial returns. The room fell silent except for the gentle tick of the antique clock on his desk. I found myself thinking about all the small things I'd noticed over the past months but dismissed. Amelia working late when Sheikh Khalid was away, her nervousness around certain phone calls, the way she'd been asking unusual questions about his banking procedures. There's more, Sophia said quietly, and somehow I knew whatever came next would be worse. She pulled up another set of documents. Based on the financial patterns we've tracked, they didn't need today's meeting to steal from Sheikh Khalid. They needed it to make the theft look legitimate. As of yesterday evening, $57 million has already been transferred from various investment accounts to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. The number hit like a physical blow. $57 million, already gone. Sheikh Khalid's voice was barely a whisper. How is that possible? Those accounts require multiple authorizations, security codes, double quotes, which your trusted assistant had access to, Karima said grimly. She's been systematically gathering the information needed for months. The remaining $193 million was to be transferred today. After the contracts were signed, I felt sick to my stomach, not just because of the money, but because of what this betrayal represented. Sheikh Khalid was one of the most generous men I'd ever known. He'd helped Amelia through her mother's illness, paid for her continuing education, treated her like family, and she'd been systematically robbing him blind. We have to call the police, I said, reaching for the phone. Wait. Both Sophia and Karima said simultaneously. Why wait? Sheikh Khalid asked, some of his strength returning. If they've already stolen nearly $60 million. Because, Sophia explained, this network is bigger than just these 4 people. Our investigation has identified at least 12 individuals across 5 countries involved in this operation. If we move too quickly, if we alert them that their cover is blown, most of them will disappear before law enforcement can act. Karima nodded. This is our chance to bring down the entire network, but we need to be smart about it. That's when Sophia said something that made my blood run cold. And there's something else, something that makes this much more dangerous than just a theft. She looked directly at me. Mrs. Margaret, they know you've seen too much. There are emails discussing you as a potential problem. Your safety may be compromised. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire. I couldn't see but could smell burning all around us. After 30 years of honest service to wealthy families, I'd somehow become a target of international criminals, but none of us realized that, as we sat in that study, making plans to bring down a criminal network, Amelia was in the next room, listening to every word through the baby monitor she'd hidden months ago, and she was already making a phone call that would put all our lives in immediate danger. The next morning, I discovered just how quickly my comfortable world could transform into something unrecognizable. I arrived at the mansion at my usual time, 7:30 sharp, but instead of the familiar scent of coffee and fresh flowers, I was greeted by the acrid smell of smoke and the sight of Sheikh Khalid's study in shambles. Books were scattered across the Persian rug. Desk drawers hung open with their contents spilled, and the antique safe stood open and empty. Most chilling of all, spray-painted across the mahogany wall, in red letters were the words, "Mind your own business or join your husband." My husband had died 3 years ago in what police ruled an accidental drowning. The message made my hands shake so violently I dropped my keys. Sheikh Khalid appeared in the doorway, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "Margaret, thank God you're safe." They came sometime after midnight. Security cameras were disabled, alarms bypassed. Professional work. What did they take? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. Every piece of evidence we'd gathered, Sophia's phone, Karima's files, backup drives, printed documents, 3 years of investigation, gone. His voice carried a defeated weight I'd never heard before. But that's not the worst part. My stomach twisted. What's the worst part? Amelia never came home last night. Her roommate called this morning. Her bed wasn't slept in. Her car is missing. And her bank accounts have been emptied. The full scope of the betrayal was becoming clear. Amelia hadn't just been feeding information to criminals. She'd been their inside coordinator all along. Every kind gesture Sheikh Khalid had made toward her, every moment of trust, had been carefully manipulated. Where are Sophia and Karima? I asked, suddenly terrified for them. Safe house. FBI took them into protective custody around 4 a.m. Apparently, Sophia had been feeding information to federal agents for months. When she called her handler after yesterday's incident, they immediately classified this as a national security threat. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a new fear. What about us? Are we safe? Sheikh Khalid's expression was grim. I don't know. The message on my wall suggests they know exactly who was involved in exposing them. My security team has tripled. But if these people can bypass million-dollar security systems, double quotes, he didn't need to finish the sentence. We both understood that our lives had been fundamentally altered. I was no longer just a housekeeper in a wealthy man's home. I was a witness to an international criminal conspiracy. And that made me dangerous to very dangerous people. There's something else, Sheikh Khalid continued. Something Sophia discovered just before the FBI took her. The 57 million they already stole. It wasn't the end goal, it was the bait. What do you mean, bait? He gestured toward his destroyed study. They wanted me to discover the theft. They wanted me to be angry, desperate to recover my money, because the real trap isn't financial, it's personal. My confusion must have shown on my face, because he pulled out a tablet and showed me a message that had arrived that morning. The email was simple, sent from an untraceable account. Your money for your reputation. Meet us tonight or tomorrow. The world learns about your charitable donations to terrorist organizations. The financial records we've created are very convincing. The words hit me like ice water. They're going to frame you. Worse than that, with the access Amelia provided, they've been creating false financial records for months. Payments to shell companies that, on paper, appear to fund extremist groups across the Middle East. If those records become public, I understood immediately. In the current political climate, even false accusations of terrorist funding would destroy Sheikh Khalid's reputation, his businesses, possibly his freedom. Even if he could eventually prove the records were fabricated, the damage would be irreversible. It's brilliant, in a sick way, he continued. They steal my money, then offer to return it in exchange for my cooperation in an even larger scheme. If I refuse, they release the false evidence and destroy my life anyway. If I agree, double quotes, you become their permanent puppet. I finished. He nodded grimly. A wealthy, well-connected businessman with an impeccable reputation, now secretly under their control. They could use my name, my connections, my financial networks to legitimize operations worth billions. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. This wasn't just about stealing money. It was about capturing and controlling an entire network of legitimate businesses and influential people. What are you going to do? I asked. Before he could answer, my phone rang. Unknown number. My hands shook as I answered. Margaret O'Sullivan. The voice was female, professional, with a slight accent I couldn't place. Yes, you have 12 hours to pack a single suitcase and disappear. This is not a threat, it's advice from someone who knows what's coming. Don't go home, don't contact anyone, don't trust anyone. 12 hours, the line went dead. Sheikh Khalid had heard enough of the conversation to understand. His face was pale. They're not just after me, they're cleaning house, eliminating anyone who can connect them to this operation. That's when I realized something that made my blood freeze. Sheikh Khalid, if they're eliminating witnesses, and Sophia and Karima are in FBI protection, what are you thinking? Amelia knows about the safe house protocols. She handled your security arrangements for 4 years. She knows how protection details work, what facilities the FBI uses in this area. My voice was rising with panic. What if her disappearance wasn't about escaping? What if she's positioning herself to ... I couldn't finish the sentence, but Sheikh Khalid understood immediately. He was already dialing his phone, calling the FBI agent who'd contacted us that morning. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He tried a second number. Same result. A third number, the direct line to the Boston FBI field office. I'm sorry, the receptionist said. Agent Morrison is unavailable. Can someone else help you? Agent Morrison. The FBI agent handling Sophia and Karima's protection was named Morrison, the same last name as Amelia. Sheikh Khalid and I stared at each other in horror as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. This wasn't just a criminal network that had infiltrated his business. It was a carefully orchestrated operation that had compromised law enforcement itself. Sophia and Karima weren't in protective custody. They were in the hands of the very people who wanted them silenced forever, and we had less than 12 hours to figure out how to save them, save ourselves, and expose a criminal conspiracy that reached further into the system than we'd ever imagined possible. But what we didn't know was that Sophia, despite being only 16, had been preparing for this exact scenario for 2 years, and the surprise she was about to spring on her captors would turn their entire operation upside down. The abandoned warehouse in East Boston looked exactly like what it was, a perfect place for terrible things to happen without witnesses. As Sheikh Khalid and I sat in his armored Mercedes a block away, watching through binoculars, I couldn't believe we were actually going through with this insane plan. This is suicide, I whispered for the 10th time. We should wait for real FBI backup. There is no real FBI backup, he replied grimly. Agent Morrison's entire team is compromised. Sophia figured that out before they took her. It had taken us 6 hours to piece together what had really happened. Sophia hadn't just been feeding information to federal agents. She'd been running her own counterintelligence operation. When the fake agent Morrison arrived to take them into protective custody, Sophia had managed to activate a distress signal on a backup phone hidden in her mother's cleaning supplies. That signal led us here, to a warehouse owned by a shell company that traced back to the same network of criminals we'd been investigating. But it also revealed something else. Sophia had been one step ahead all along. I still don't understand how a 16-year-old girl could orchestrate something this complex, I said, checking the digital recorder in my pocket for the third time. Sheikh Khalid managed a grim smile. Because she's not just any her father wasn't just investigating criminal networks in Morocco, he was training her to carry on his work if something happened to him. She's been playing a role for 3 years, pretending to be helpless, while gathering intelligence on one of the most sophisticated criminal operations in the world. Through the warehouse's grimy windows, we could see movement, figures in dark clothing, the shapes of vehicles, the occasional flash of light that might have been weapons or communication devices. Are you sure she can hear us? I asked, touching the small communication device Sophie had pressed into my hand during those frantic few hours when we'd thought she was safe. She can hear us. The question is whether she's still alive to respond. As if summoned by his words, a tiny voice crackled through the device. Mrs. Margaret, Sheikh Khalid, can you hear me? Relief flooded through me so intensely I almost sobbed. Sophia, are you all right? Is your mother safe? We're alive, but not for long. There are 7 of them here, including Amelia and the fake agent Morrison. They're waiting for someone else to arrive before they... Her voice was steady, but I could hear the fear underneath. Before they what? Sheikh Khalid asked. Before they make us disappear permanently. But Mrs. Margaret, I need you to listen carefully. Everything I told you about our investigation, I didn't tell you everything. Even through the tiny speaker, her voice carried a new authority that made me sit up straighter. What didn't you tell us? The reason Mama and I came to Boston wasn't just to hide. We came because this warehouse, this entire operation, is the hub for the network that killed my father. We've spent 3 years getting close to Sheikh Khalid, not just to warn him, but because his business connections gave us access to financial records we needed to map the entire organization. My head was spinning. You mean you've been using us? I mean we've been protecting you while building a case that will destroy them completely. But we needed them to feel safe enough to bring their entire leadership together in one place. Tonight, they're all here for a final meeting before liquidating their American operations and disappearing. Sheikh Khalid leaned closer to the device. Sophia, how many people are we talking about? 12 individuals who collectively control operations across North America, Europe, and North Africa. The people who killed my father, who've been stealing from legitimate businesses, who funnel money to terrorist organizations, all of them, in one building, right now. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about saving Sophia and Karima, it was about bringing down an entire international criminal network. What do you need us to do? I asked. In exactly 10 minutes, every law enforcement agency in 3 countries is going to descend on this building. Real FBI, Interpol, Moroccan intelligence, even some people Mama used to work with. But they need the criminals to incriminate themselves first. How are they going to do that? Sophia's voice carried a note of something that might have been satisfaction. Because I've been recording everything for the past 4 hours, every confession, every plan, every admission of guilt. But I need you to create a distraction so I can transmit the recordings before they realize what I've done. My hands were shaking as I processed what she was asking. What kind of distraction? Sheikh Khalid, you need to walk in the front door and offer them exactly what they want, your complete cooperation. Make them think you've been broken by their threats. Get them talking about their plans, their previous operations, anything that will add to the evidence, Sophia. Sheikh Khalid said slowly, you're asking me to walk into a building full of armed criminals and hope they don't kill me. Immediately, I'm asking you to trust that a 16-year-old girl who has been planning this moment for 3 years knows what she's doing. Mama and I have been in more dangerous situations than this. We survived them by being smarter than the people hunting us. Through the binoculars, I saw movement near the warehouse entrance. A black SUV was pulling up, and figures were emerging. Sophia, there are more people arriving. I know. That's the final group we've been waiting for. Mrs. Margaret, I need you to listen carefully. In your purse, you have a small device that looks like a makeup compact. Do you remember me giving that to you? I searched frantically and found what she was talking about. a small silver compact. I'd assumed was a kind gesture from a teenager trying to be helpful. Yes, I have it. That's not makeup. It's a signal amplifier. When Sheikh Khalid goes inside, you need to position yourself exactly 50 feet from the northeast corner of the building and activate it by pressing the mirror 3 times. That will boost my transmission signal enough to reach the federal receivers. Everything was happening too fast. 3 days ago, my biggest concern had been whether the silver was polished properly for Sheikh Khalid's dinner parties. Now, I was part of an international law enforcement operation. What if something goes wrong? I asked. Sophia's voice was quiet but firm. Mrs. Margaret, do you remember what you told me 6 months ago when I was worried about my English exam? I did remember. I told you that brave people aren't people who aren't afraid. Brave people are people who do the right thing even when they're terrified. Exactly. And right now, we're all terrified, but we're also the only people who can stop these criminals from destroying more lives. Sheikh Khalid straightened his tie and checked his watch. 10 minutes, you said. 9 minutes now. Once you go in, Mrs. Margaret has exactly 5 minutes to get into position and activate the amplifier. Then law enforcement moves in. And if they kill Sheikh Khalid before then? I asked. Sophia's voice carried a cold certainty that reminded me she'd been living with violence and danger for years. They won't kill him immediately. They need him alive to access his financial networks. But they will hurt him to make sure he's compliant. Sheikh Khalid was already opening the car door. Then we'd better make sure this works perfectly the first time. As he walked toward the warehouse, his silhouette disappearing into the shadows between streetlights, I realized that Sophia had orchestrated something far more complex than a simple rescue operation. She'd turned herself and her mother into bait to lure an entire criminal network into one location at one time, all while positioning legitimate law enforcement to capture them with ironclad evidence. But as I clutched the signal amplifier and prepared to play my part in a 16-year-old's master plan, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still missing something crucial about who Sophia and Karima really were. That final revelation would come in the next few minutes, and it would change everything I thought I understood about the past 3 years. The next 8 minutes felt like 8 hours. I positioned myself exactly where Sophia had instructed, crouched behind a rusted dumpster 50 feet from the warehouse's northeast corner, my hands trembling as I held the device that looked like a makeup compact but was apparently sophisticated surveillance equipment. Through the warehouse windows, I could see shadows moving, hear muffled voices rising and falling. Sheikh Khalid had been inside for 3 minutes, and so far, no gunshots. I chose to take that as a positive sign. Mrs. Margaret, Sophia's voice crackled through my earpiece. Can you see the black SUV that just arrived? I peered around the dumpster. The SUV sat about 30 yards away, engines still running. Yes, I see it. The woman getting out is Director Sarah Chen, from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The real one, not another fake agent. She's been working with us for 18 months. My confusion must have been audible in my breathing, because Sophia continued, Mrs. Margaret, there's something Mama and I never told you about why we really came to Boston. What do you mean? We didn't just come here to hide from criminals in Morocco. We came here because the American government asked us to. The words hit me like a physical blow. What are you saying? My father wasn't just a Moroccan intelligence officer. He was a joint CIA-Moroccan asset investigating international terrorism funding. When he was killed, Mama and I didn't just lose a husband and father, we lost our handler and protector. But before he died, he passed along intelligence that led the CIA to this network operating in Boston. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. You're saying you're, what, undercover agents? I'm saying that my mother is a former intelligence operative who agreed to work with American law enforcement to bring down the people who killed her husband. And I'm saying that for 3 years, our job has been to gather evidence while keeping Sheikh Khalid safe. Safe from what? From becoming their next victim. Mrs. Margaret, Sheikh Khalid wasn't randomly targeted. This network specifically chose him because his reputation and business connections would give them access to legitimate financial channels across the Middle East and North Africa. If they'd succeeded, they could have moved billions in illegal funds while appearing to support legitimate development projects. Through my earpiece, I could hear Sheikh Khalid's voice from inside the warehouse, though I couldn't make out individual words. Sophia's voice became more urgent. He's doing perfectly. He's convinced them that he's broken, that he'll cooperate completely. Amelia is bragging about how easy it was to manipulate him, and the fake agent Morrison is detailing their operations in 12 different countries. Mrs. Margaret, I need you to activate the amplifier now. My hands shaking, I pressed the complex mirror 3 times as instructed. A tiny green light appeared, barely visible. Signal is strong, Sophia whispered. Everything is being recorded and transmitted. 2 more minutes and law enforcement moves in. That's when I heard Sheikh Khalid's voice clearly for the first time, carrying through the warehouse walls with surprising volume. So you're telling me that this entire renewable energy project was fabricated? That there never was any intention of building solar farms in Morocco? A man's voice, probably Victor Kozlov, the fake Mr. Rashid, responded with arrogant satisfaction. Of course, it was fabricated. You naive fool, did you really think we cared about clean energy? The project was a front to access your banking relationships and steal everything you've built over 20 years, and the 57 million you've already taken. That was just the beginning. A woman's voice said, Amelia, her tone cold and calculating. Once we had access to your complete financial network, we planned to drain everything, your business accounts, personal investments, real estate holdings, even your charitable foundation. We calculated approximately 400 million in total assets we could liquidate before anyone noticed. My blood ran cold. $400 million, Sheikh Khalid's entire life's work. But that still wasn't the real prize, was it? Sheikh Khalid continued, and I realized he was expertly drawing out confessions. The fake agent Morrison's voice joined the conversation. The real prize was your reputation and connections. With your name and network, we could legitimize money transfers worth billions. Payments that would appear to support renewable energy and infrastructure development, but would actually fund operations across 3 continents. What kind of operations? Sheikh Khalid pressed. Arms trafficking, human smuggling, narcotics distribution, Amelia said casually, as if discussing grocery shopping, plus direct funding for terrorist cells in North Africa and the Middle East. Your squeaky clean reputation would have been perfect. Cover through my earpiece. Sophia's voice was tight with controlled emotion. They just confessed to everything, Mrs. Margaret. Terrorism funding, international arms trafficking, money laundering. This recording will destroy their entire network. But then I heard something that made my heart stop. A new voice from inside the warehouse, speaking with a slight accent. Enough talking. Kill the Sheikh now. Find the girl and her mother, and let's finish this, Sophia. I whispered urgently into my earpiece. They're about to, I know. She cut me off. Mrs. Margaret, I need you to listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but you have to trust me. What are you talking about? I'm not just a 16-year-old girl who speaks Arabic and knows about international crime. I'm a 16-year-old girl who has been trained by some of the best intelligence operatives in the world. And right now, I'm about to show these criminals exactly what that training means. Before I could ask what she meant, I heard an explosion of sound from inside the warehouse. Not gunshots, but something else. Breaking glass, shouting, the crash of overturning furniture. Through the windows, I could see figures running, shadows moving chaotically. Emergency. Lighting flickered on, casting eerie red glows against the walls. Sophia, what's happening? Her voice came back, calm, controlled, speaking in rapid-fire instructions. Mama and I just disabled 4 armed guards and secured Sheikh Khalid. The criminals are trapped in the main room with no exits. Law enforcement is moving in now. As if summoned by her words, I heard the distinctive whine of police sirens approaching from multiple directions. The black SUV I'd seen earlier suddenly blazed with flashing lights. It had been an undercover FBI vehicle all along. Cars poured into the warehouse district from every direction. FBI, Boston police, vehicles with government plates I didn't recognize. Within seconds, the entire area was flooded with law enforcement officers in tactical gear. But the most shocking moment came when I saw Sophia emerge from the warehouse. She wasn't the quiet, studious teenager I'd known for 3 years. She moved with the controlled precision of a trained operative, carrying what appeared to be professional surveillance equipment. Her clothes were different tactical gear. Instead of her usual school outfits, even her posture had changed, radiating authority and competence. Behind her came Karima, also transformed. Gone was the humble cleaning lady persona. The woman walking out of that warehouse moved like the intelligence officer she'd always been, coordinating with FBI agents, as if she'd been working with them for years. Sheikh Khalid appeared last, supported by 2 agents, but clearly unharmed. When he saw me crouched behind the dumpster, his expression shifted from relief to something like amazement. Margaret, he called out, Do you realize what just happened? Here, I stood on shaking legs, still clutching the signal amplifier. I'm not sure I understand any of what just happened here. Sophia approached me, her expression gentle despite her transformed appearance. Mrs. Margaret, for 3 years, you've been working alongside a former Moroccan intelligence operative and her daughter, who was being trained to carry on intelligence work. We've been gathering evidence on an international criminal network while protecting Sheikh Khalid from becoming their next victim. But why didn't you tell me? I asked, feeling slightly hurt by the deception. Because, Karima said, joining us, the best protection for everyone involved was for the operation to appear completely normal. You couldn't act naturally around us if you knew we were federal assets. Your genuine reactions to our situation made our cover story believable to everyone, including the criminals. FBI Director Chen approached our group, pulling off tactical gear. Mrs. O'Sullivan, you played a crucial role in this operation. The signal amplification you provided allowed us to record confessions that will put 12 international criminals in prison for the rest of their lives. I looked around at the organized chaos of the law enforcement operation, at Sophia directing agents towards specific evidence locations, at Karima coordinating with what appeared to be Interpol representatives. So this was all planned, everything that happened over the past 3 years. Not everything, Sophia said softly. Our affection for you was real, Mrs. Margaret. Our respect for Sheikh Khalid was genuine. The friendships we built weren't part of the job, they were the best part of living through this operation. Sheikh Khalid put a gentle hand on my shoulder. Margaret, I want you to know something. When this operation began, federal agents approached me about providing cover for Karima and Sophia. I agreed, because I wanted to help bring down the criminals who had killed Sophia's father. But what I didn't expect was how much having them in our lives would enrich it. What happens now? I asked, still struggling to process the scope of what had occurred. Director Chen answered, now, we prosecute the largest international criminal network we've dismantled in 20 years. The evidence gathered through this operation has already led to arrests in 7 countries. The financial records alone will allow us to freeze hundreds of millions in illegal assets. And what about Sophia and Karima? What about their safety? Sophia exchanged a look with her mother before answering. That's something we wanted to discuss with you and Sheikh Khalid. We've been offered permanent asylum in the United States, full citizenship, and the opportunity to start completely new lives. But I sensed there was more coming. But we've also been offered the chance to continue this kind of work, Karima said, to use our skills and experience to help other families, other victims of international crime. Sheikh Khalid's expression was thoughtful. And what would you prefer to do? Sophia smiled, the first completely genuine, unguarded smile I'd seen from her in 3 years. We'd like to do both. Continue the work that helps people like us, but from a base where we have people who care about us, people who have become family. The implication took a moment to sink in. You mean, we mean, Karima said, that if Sheikh Khalid is willing to employ a former intelligence operative as something other than a cleaning lady, and if you're willing to work alongside people whose backgrounds are more complicated than they initially appeared. Of course, Sheikh Khalid said immediately, my house has never felt more like home than when you were both part of it. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Even though you lied to me for 3 years. Even though we protected you for 3 years while building evidence that has made the world safer for thousands of innocent people, Sophia corrected gently. As dawn broke over Boston Harbor, painting the warehouse district in soft golden light, I realized that my comfortable, predictable life as a housekeeper had been permanently transformed into something far more meaningful. But none of us anticipated that the resolution of this criminal conspiracy would lead to the most surprising revelation of all, one that would change not just our futures, but our understanding of the past 20 years. 3 months later, I was polishing silver in Sheikh Khalid's study, the same study that had been destroyed by criminals and completely restored, when Sophia burst in with an expression of excitement I'd rarely seen from her. Mrs. Margaret, Sheikh Khalid, you need to see this immediately. She was holding an official-looking document and practically vibrating with energy. After months of testimony, court proceedings, and media attention following the arrest of what newspapers had dubbed the Boston International Crime Syndicate, we'd all been looking forward to returning to something resembling normal life. What is it, dear? I asked, setting down the tea service I'd been arranging. Sheikh Khalid looked up from his correspondence, smiling at Sophia's enthusiasm. In the months since the warehouse operation, she'd been splitting time between regular, high school classes and working with federal agencies to help prosecute the criminals we'd captured. The combination seemed to suit her perfectly. "It's about the money," she said, practically bouncing on her toes. "The $57 million they stole from Sheikh Khalid's accounts." "What about it?" Sheikh Khalid asked. "The money had been frozen as evidence, and we'd been told it might take years to recover through the court system. It's been fully recovered, plus interest, plus damages," Sophia announced triumphantly. But that's not the incredible part. She spread the document across Sheikh Khalid's desk. It appeared to be some kind of financial statement, but with numbers so large they seemed almost fictional. "The incredible part is what the investigation revealed about the criminal network's total assets. Mrs. Margaret, do you remember when I told you this network had been operating for years before they targeted Sheikh Khalid?" "Yes, of course." "Well, it turns out they'd been systematically stealing from wealthy individuals and legitimate businesses for over 2 decades. The total value of assets seized from their operations is..." She paused for dramatic effect. $1.7 billion. The number was so large it took a moment to register. Sheikh Khalid sat back in his chair, looking stunned. 1.7 billion. In cash, real estate, investments, art, precious metals, and seized luxury items. All of it stolen from victims across 12 countries over 20 years. I felt dizzy trying to process the scope of what Sophia was describing. "What happens to all that money?" "That's the best part," Sophia said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Under international asset forfeiture laws, victims of the criminal network are entitled to compensation from the seized assets. But here's what makes this extraordinary." She flipped to another page of the document. "Because Sheikh Khalid's cooperation was instrumental in bringing down the entire network, and because the evidence we gathered led to seizures that recovered money for hundreds of other victims, he's entitled to a substantial finder's fee from the international recovery operation." Sheikh Khalid was scanning the document, his expression shifting from confusion to amazement. "Sophia, these numbers, this can't be correct." "It's correct. The international court has awarded Sheikh Khalid 12% of the total recovered assets as compensation for his losses and cooperation in the investigation." I did quick math in my head and felt my knees go weak. 12% of $1.7 billion was over $200 million. Sheikh Khalid whispered. Sophia nodded enthusiastically, which means that by helping to catch international criminals, Sheikh Khalid has not only recovered his stolen money, he's become significantly wealthier than he was before any of this started. The irony was staggering. The criminals who had tried to steal Sheikh Khalid's fortune had inadvertently led him to a recovery operation that quadrupled his wealth. "But wait," Sophia continued, "there's more." She pulled out another document. "Mrs. Margaret, do you remember the message you received the night before the warehouse operation? The anonymous phone call warning you to disappear." I certainly did remember. The female voice telling me I had 12 hours to pack and run. Yes, that terrified me. It turns out that call came from an FBI agent who was monitoring communications to the criminal network. She was genuinely trying to warn you because she thought you were in immediate danger. Her name is Agent Patricia Morrison. Morrison, like the fake agent who took you into custody. Exactly. The criminals had been monitoring FBI communications and learned that Agent Patricia Morrison was investigating their network. So they created a fake agent, Morrison, actually a criminal named Robert Collins, to intercept us when we tried to contact law enforcement. Sheikh Khalid was shaking his head in amazement. So there were real FBI agents trying to help us, but we couldn't reach them because the criminals were intercepting the communications, right? And it turns out, Agent Patricia Morrison has been tracking this criminal network for 5 years. When she realized we'd made contact with the real investigation, she worked with Karima and Sophia to coordinate the warehouse operation. I was beginning to understand the full complexity of what had happened. So that night, there were 3 different operations running simultaneously. 4, actually, Sophia said with a grin. The criminals trying to eliminate witnesses, FBI trying to rescue us, Mama and me trying to gather evidence, and Sheikh Khalid trying to save all of us. The fact that everything worked out is honestly miraculous. Sheikh Khalid stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Boston harbor. Sophia, this recovery award, it's more money than I know what to do with, actually, Sophia said quietly. Mama and I have some ideas about that. She pulled out a final document. This one, clearly a proposal she'd prepared herself. What if we used the money to create something that would help other families like ours, other victims of international crime, other refugees fleeing criminal networks, other people who need protection while law enforcement builds cases against dangerous criminals? I moved closer to read over her shoulder. The document outlined a comprehensive plan for a foundation that would provide safe houses, legal assistance, financial support, and coordination with international law enforcement for victims of organized crime. We could call it the Justice Recovery Foundation, Sophia continued, and we could base it right here in Boston, using Sheikh, Khalid's business connections and Mama's intelligence experience to help families all over the world. Sheikh Khalid turned from the window, his expression thoughtful. You're talking about turning my home into headquarters for international anti-crime operations. We're talking about turning your good fortune into good works, Karima said, appearing in the doorway, and giving families like ours hope that justice is possible, even when the criminals seem too powerful to stop. I looked around the study, the same room, where this entire adventure had begun when Sophia first spoke Arabic and exposed the fake investors. Now it might become the heart of an organization dedicated to helping other families find justice and safety. There's one more thing, Sophia said, pulling a small wrapped package from her pocket. Mrs. Margaret, this is for you. I unwrapped it carefully and found a small silver locket. Inside was a photograph of Sophia, Karima, Sheikh Khalid and me, taken during a quiet moment in the weeks following the warehouse operation. What's this for? It's a thank you, Sophia said simply. For 3 years, you treated me like a granddaughter and Mama like family, even when you thought we were just the cleaning lady and her daughter. Your kindness gave us strength during some very dark times. But there's also a practical reason, Karima added. If you're willing, we'd like you to be the first director of family services for the Justice Recovery Foundation. Your experience managing households and caring for people would be perfect for coordinating support services for families in crisis. The offer took my breath away. You want me to help run an international foundation. We want you to help us save families, Sheikh Khalid said simply, just like you helped save ours. As I sat in that restored study, holding a locket containing a photograph of the most unlikely family I'd ever been part of, I realized that sometimes the most extraordinary adventures begin with the most ordinary moments. A teenage girl speaking Arabic in a hallway, a cleaning lady who turned out to be so much more, a wealthy man whose generosity created the opportunity for justice to prevail. 6 months ago, if someone had told me that I'd help bring down an international criminal network, recover hundreds of millions in stolen assets, and become part of a foundation dedicated to helping crime victims around the world, I'd have thought they were insane. But, looking around at Sophia organizing evidence files, Karima coordinating with federal agents via secure phone, and Sheikh Khalid planning how to use his unexpected fortune to help others, I realized that extraordinary things happen when ordinary people decide to stand up for what's right, even when they're terrified. The Justice Recovery Foundation opened its doors 8 months later. In our first year, we helped 47 families escape criminal organizations, assisted in the prosecution of 63 international criminals, and recovered over $300 million in stolen assets for victims around the world. But the most important thing we recovered wasn't money, it was hope. Hope that justice is possible, that families can be protected, and that sometimes the people who look most powerless are actually the ones with the strength to change everything. If you're watching this story and you're facing your own impossible situation, remember what a 16-year-old girl taught me. Brave people aren't people who aren't afraid. Brave people are people who do the right thing, even when they're terrified. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the world.